Bunch of nerds.
What's going on, everybody? Here we are. You've got Vigilante1939 and you've got the Nerd Room, and we're here to welcome you to our first partnership podcast live stream.
Yep.
Four Questions About Fandom. Guys, I am pumped to kick off this endeavor. This is going to be an absolute blast, and we're going to try to get a new set of content in front of you this week, real raw and just excitement pumped into you for the weekend. Gentlemen, welcome. I'm so pleased that we're able to do this together. And would you look at that? The timing is perfect because here's the other man coming from Vigilante1939. It's Zeddy. He is what he needs to be. He is what we need him to be. But guys, let's do this. Let's jump into it. I'll frame this out a little bit, but first I gotta see what's going on. It's been a minute since we jumped on a live stream together. Man. Caruso's, how are you boys doing tonight?
I'm doing great, man. You know, that opening when it's like the WandaVision, the Please Stand By, it's like it brought me back to that, like how exciting that was when that show was on.
So fun.
It's like I just felt that again, like that every week, that anticipation and that mystery or whatever. So it's great, but things are good. We're excited. What else, son? I mean,
dude, no, so pumped to be back. Like you said, it's been a minute since we've done this, and the last couple were on weekdays. Not to take away; those were excellent streams. But you know, our real magic happens on the weekends. Yeah, man, our real magic happens on the weekends. On the weekends when the real magic happens. So, and we're not really contained to one specific topic tonight. So I'm looking to see how this thing kind of freestyles, and I'm just happy to be hanging out with you guys. It's the best excuse to hang out with you guys is do a live stream, right?
Yeah.
Are you gonna rap later?
A whole show.
I can't rap. Yeah, right. A whole show for us, but also for you guys.
Oh, it's a goddamn Batman, my podcasting partner in crime. You've got the bat suit framed up behind you there. You've got the bottle of bourbon beside you. How are you feeling tonight, brother?
I'm feeling good. Got the little pre-record going. I'm hoping Zeddy can make it in here.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just got a few internet problems, folks, but he is not canceled like Shang-Chi might be by tomorrow morning. But Zeddy, we're rooting for you, man.
Yeah.
Reroute that router and jump into this thing. It'll be a good one, I think. A treat for the fans.
Yeah.
I think Ultron's screwing around with Zeddy or something like that. I'm not Corporal Mephisto, right?
Is Mephisto going to make an appearance? Because he seems to make an appearance in every single MCU live stream.
Everywhere.
So, guys, we're going to kick this thing off. Zeddy's going to come in when he is able to fix up that rudder. It's all good. We got time. We have got space here to open up this discussion wide. You know, like you said, Nico, we usually have a focus topic, whether it's MCU or Star Wars thing that we've done. And this show is just really going to blow the doors off of that. The handcuffs are off. We can go literally anywhere. And the key to this, man, being 4 questions about fandom. You know, this is going to be our monthly show, our monthly partnered show on YouTube here, exclusive to YouTube.
Awesome.
And what we're going to do is we're going to put 4 unique questions on the table about literally any piece of fandom. Now, the key thing here is that everything's up for discussion, debate, and opinions, but the questions themselves have been kept confidential. So the one of us, all have a question. No one knows what the topic is or what direction it's going to go. And the person that brings the question to the table will also be moderating that piece of the discussion. We're going to let each question go for 15 minutes or less, and then we're going to switch topics to something else. You're going to get a wide array of new topics, debates, and fun in front of you. We encourage you guys to toss your thoughts into the chat, try to bring your perspective to the table as well. And guys, one thing before we really kick this off, before you leave tonight, make sure to just give the channel a little sub, because you'll be able to see our next shows coming up here and some of the videos that we're dropping onto the YouTube page. So there it is, guys. 4 questions about fandom, and we're going to jump straight into it. Carlos, by random draw, you have been chosen to deliver the first question on the first episode of 4 Questions About Fandom. So, my friend, my podcasting partner, I turn it over to you to lay it down for us.
Shoot, the pressure is on. I thought I could just throw this idea into that DM and then walk away. Let the explosions go off behind me like the Joker in The Dark Knight. But here we go. So, I got one that's a little off the beaten path.
Excited.
Is the multiverse actually a good idea for the MCU? And so the reason I asked that is I was kind of thinking the reason that the MCU is as successful and beloved and embraced as it is because it was a tight, linear story. And with those post-credit scenes, you got a whole new audience that kind of got to be into it, right? And part of that buy-in was, you know, the water cooler. It's like, this group of people, we know what's going on because we've been watching the movies and we know who the players are and we're trying to figure out what the tease is, and maybe Jim doesn't quite know. So this is our thing and we love it and we're kind of building that up, and then Jim's going home and he's hitting the Netflix and watching all the movies, trying to catch up, trying to be part of that conversation. So everybody has embraced this thing and been in on it and kind of grown it together to that grand finale that is Avengers Endgame. And so at the Warner Brother DC side, they decided to do the multiverse thing, but there I kind of get it because they're trying to build the airplane while it's flying. But with the MCU, it's like you got this tight, well-oiled machine forging ahead, and then you're kind of telling people, well, maybe the things that you've invested in and that you love might not matter. Maybe the death of Tony Stark that shook you to your core at the end of Endgame is no big deal because bibbity bobbity boo, Tony Stark from Earth 32 shows up and you know what, he's still the same, and you know, poor man's Robert Downey fills your shoes. And I'm just kind of wondering if that might erode what makes the MCU special. Might erode this really cool, really tight thing that we've all been a part of and make it kind of not matter anymore, right? And I don't know, like, I kind of look to you guys a little bit because it's like the What If show is on and it's like, I don't need to check that out. But that's like the first thing ever that like we started off with WandaVision talk and you guys were staying up till the wee hours of the morning to make sure that you were in and locked and loaded.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then it's like, what if I just sleep in today and get to the episode whenever? So that's my question. Is the multiverse, and I'm going to put a caveat on this because of you two, and Zeddy's not in here yet, notwithstanding Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man.
Smart man.
So notwithstanding, I'm using the notwithstanding clause that we like up here in Canada because we have to use it with Quebec all the time.
Sure.
So notwithstanding Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, is it actually a good idea for the MCU?
Wow. I had a tweet the other day. I was going to say, what if I never watched What If, but Nick didn't let me do it. You know, I got to be honest with you. Like, they're on such a grand scale with everything that they do. And yet, while they're doing this multiverse, we got Black Widow, which was kind of contained because it was a prequel. It was a story in the past. And Shang-Chi didn't really felt like its own story too, right? Mm-hmm. And then at the end, of course, we know it's leading into all this stuff. So I want to say, like, right now, they're doing a really good job of still keeping it contained, but that idea is out there of what's coming. And so I think for me, it's very exciting. And I think the GA, the brand, the loyalty, who embrace Marvel, I think they're hitting on all cylinders. I really do. Time will tell. But I think they're looking at this, Carlos, as a way to bring the X-Men in, the Fantastic Four, and they're using it to where they don't have to kind of start over and then maybe recast a few people. So I'm going to say right now, it's a good idea that they have never proven. All they do is succeed with everything they do. I went into the last few ventures thinking I wasn't going to like what I was seeing, and I walk out every time satisfied. Now, the What If thing, I agree with you. We have not watched it.
No, I watched it.
It's animated. I'm a big animated fan, but for some reason, I just really haven't had the time. I probably will eventually check it out. But then I saw the Hawkeye trailer, which I wasn't really excited for, and it didn't really like wow me. But again, we talked about it on our podcast. I am slightly more interested, and I like the vibe of it with the Christmas and Jeremy Renner, kind of like Hawkeye, James Bond, and Haley Stanfield. I mean, it looks like it might be a lot of fun. And we've got Eternals coming, right? I know we got the Sony stuff, which is not, well, we don't want to spoil it, but Sony and MCU might be the same thing. So I think that they are just, I'm so impressed. The brand is so big.
You know, for me, I'm in the middle. I think it might be a good idea or bad idea based on who you ask and for what their goal is. I'm still wondering, is the multiverse so they can do whatever they want and get away with it? Is it to actually bring characters in? Is it for fan service? Like, you know, it feels like it is for No Way Home. I think, like my dad said, time will tell, but it is an interesting question because the multiverse has always been more of DC's thing, who does it really well, and kind of what Warner Brothers is doing with it is they're really trying to use it to make these alternate worlds exist and these other stories happen. And if they can cross them over, they will. But it seems like the MCU is really using it to make integral things happen or to justify things in continuity. So I think it's going to be a good idea for the GA who just goes yes to everything they do. And it might end up being a bad idea for us fans who are like, I don't like that they did that, or they can't get away with that with me. Or like you said, there's some people who just want Iron Man back already and don't care if he comes back. But for me, I'll be like, if you bring him back in any capacity right now, I think it's cheap. It devalues everything that happened. So it's a good question. That's a hard one. I would prefer if a company was going to hit a home run doing it, it would be DC because I want DC to have something first and win at it, like they did with Wonder Woman once. But I don't know. That's a good first question. So I think it's both good and bad for whoever you ask at the time. I don't know.
I'm kind of leaning towards the really positive end thing here. You know, I'm like, admittedly, I'm the MCU fanboy, and I'm always going to praise
Mr. Marvel.
I've loved this from the onset. But the thing that I love about this new avenue of storytelling is that it meets this expectation of escalation inside of that.
Sure.
And we've done the big Thanos Infinity Gauntlet. We have these crossovers. And we can't move away from that. We can't really go back to individualized sideload storytelling based on what they've laid the groundwork for. Even in the movie of Shang-Chi, you see people popping up. I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a lot more connection there than I anticipated, especially when you get into post-credit and all that. And so they've set themselves up this real comic book film universe where at any given time, someone can pop in if it makes sense for the story, if it makes sense for the larger MCU narrative. And this MCU thing, or this multiverse thing, I should say, makes sense to me on the next step. I think the important thing is that they hold the hand of not only the fan base, but the GA in telling this story. I think that if they run and sprint to aspects of the multiverse that are confusing, it's going to make the stories feel rushed. It's going to make them feel not as engaging as they have been in the past. And so things like Loki, even Shang-Chi, Doctor Strange, No Way Home, these are all going to be contributing to like this humongous story, I feel, that will be the Kang the Conqueror at some point down the road. And so I think this is necessary for the MCU, but they also have to be cognizant that they can't take away the consequences and the important pieces of what came before. I did struggle a little bit with in Loki first episode when they basically throw the Infinity Stones in a drawer and say, look, these are nothing now. It's all about time. And so that does have implications for the previous storytelling. They're never going to take away the Infinity Saga. They're never going to take away Captain America picking up the hammer. But like you said, Carlos, they could have Iron Man back. The Evans could return as Captain America. Who knows? Yeah. So it's all good. And I have faith in Feige, and I have faith in the storytellers there, that the way that they progress the narrative into the multiverse is going to be forward thinking and not backwards thinking. But at some point, whomever comes back and eventually does it, Secret Wars is going to be there, right? It's on the table. It is a massive crossover, and it's the only way. Yes, right there, issue number 8. It's the only way to continue to escalate these stories. Yeah. And so I kind of dig it.
Yeah, for me, like the danger with a multiverse is you can always put yourself in a position where the audience just doesn't care anymore because the consequences are never truly there.
It's smaller.
Because they parachute things in from other places. Like that's why I'm really struggling with this finale for Nick Spencer's Spider-Man book right now, because every issue, God, almost every single page, it's like, remember this? Well, it doesn't matter because this was happening over here and I wasn't really this guy, or maybe I wasn't this girl because like multiverse shenanigans and demon stuff that's happening in the background, and that thing you thought you knew doesn't really matter because it may not have played out the way you thought because what happened off, like, you know what I mean? Like, and you guys are reading it, and I just cannot get to issue 75 to have this guy out the door fast enough because nothing matters, because there's no consequences to anything because it's all just willy-nilly. And it really sucks because he's gone back and he's kind of contaminated like those original stories because he's pulling stuff from like the 70s and 80s. And it's like, well, dude, you're telling your nonsense story now. Like, don't try and put your fingerprints on all this old stuff. And that's kind of what really killed the Clone Saga in the 90s. Like, Nick, you remember going through that. Like, there was a massive segment of fandom that was like, this sucks, not because we're against you telling a dynamic and different story, but because now you're telling us that all these experiences that we had with this character don't matter. Because he may or may not have been the same guy. So I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting. Yeah. I think it's interesting. So Zeddy, you were able to clock in here, baby. I'm over the moon happy that you're with us. Welcome. And clear and broadcasting. So did you catch the question?
I did not, but better late than never, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, man of the hour. My question is after this very tight, very unified, very succinct story in the MCU leading us to the Infinity Saga, is the multiverse actually a good idea for them to start playing with after we've had everybody buy in on this tight story? And could it actually start to detract from those things that has made the MCU so special? Because like any conversation about it is about how they're giving the fans what they want and they're bringing us through this unified story. And now it's kind of like, well, like with Loki, right? You had these things that played out, and the Infinity Gems. Remember this thing that you spent 23 movies with us on? They're paperweights now. So, yeah, I don't know. It was just something I thought I'd throw out there. So that's the question, man. Is it a good idea or a bad idea?
I mean, certainly on the MCU side, I think there's less doubt, I would say, for me. I mean, Kevin Feige is, the king of entertainment. He's the king of comic book cinema at the moment. So, I'm not going to really doubt whatever choice he really wants to make at this point. I think they've earned their multiverse. Whereas, I'm not going to make this about the other side, but the other side clearly has not. And they're clearly still trying to build their footing a little bit. But, I mean, you got to look at it from the fence, right? I mean, I think they've certainly done it organically, I would say. WandaVision, Loki, Doctor Strange 2, Spider-Man, No Way Home. So I think their multiverse is going to come organically because they're actually using it, for their storytelling, right? They're not just using it for cash grabs. They're not just using it to bring people back. They're not just using it, for, to explain continuity. If something doesn't work, they're just going to say, oh, well, multiverse doesn't connect. It's not what they're going to do. I mean, they're going to use it to bring your Tobey Maguires and your Andrew Garfields back. They're going to maybe. It's real though. It's real though.
Can I hear Toby's a buzzword for me now?
Yeah. You
Triggered.
missed it. You weren't supposed to bring that up.
Carlos
and
I didn't come in at that point. I'm sorry.
Hashtag Toby
brother.
talk.
Yeah, it was the notwithstanding clause because I knew that would be an automatic. Of course, this is the best idea ever. It's the greatest thing.
If
there are cars coming, mother. Sorry.
If
hysterical.
I should have thrown the big if in there. My bad.
Yeah.
If those two come back, and again, bringing Venom in the MCU, if that's what they're ever doing. Man, I'm just really striking out here. Okay,
That's two buzzwords for Nico.
If they want to bring who's ever not in the MCU into the MCU,
Reed Richards,
sure, I'll take
Deadpool.
it. But yeah, I mean, again, I think they're certainly using it for storytelling purposes. So, I'm bought into it. I'm going to trust that, there's a plan in motion for all this stuff, and I'm on the ride. For it. So I think, obviously the con is that, yeah, it's messy. People don't like it. It's too little too late. I don't think it's too little too late, but I think there's way upside than downside, if you ask me.
Yeah. For me, honestly, I kind of think it's unnecessary at this point for them. It's like you guys are firing on all cylinders. And I was kind of curious to see, like, if you peel away the pieces that are, well, not even WandaVision fully, because you could just have her take that villainous turn and it doesn't have to be a multiverse story. So you're probably just going to tweak what you're doing with Doctor Strange, but they're building up to a really cool story that is going to be your new Avengers. And you might not necessarily need Kang, but you've got some other heavy hitters. And I kind of would be on for the ride through 2, 3, 4, 5 years with just building this out to the point that we see an Avengers led by Sam Wilson's Captain America and has Riri Williams on it and your Kate Bishop Hawkeye and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know that I need all this multiversal shenanigans. I do, like, personally, I think that the reason that they're even touching this at all is because of Sony and Spider-Man. And that's this is the bridge to kind of fix those things. And I don't know, I think they're trying to get there before DC. Like,
there's a real possibility though that this ends at the end of Doctor Strange 2, that they put a cap on it for the time being. Yes, we do have Loki season 2, and yes, we have that story that's been seeded, but that can happen kind of in the background and that can pop up later down the road. We could still have the more MCU-esque storytelling grounded, if you will, compared to the multiverse being told across Captain America 4, across whatever's going to happen next on the big screen into your Young Avengers or New Avengers or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Because I do agree with you that No Way Home and the Multiverse of Madness, both of them feel out of place right now in the MCU. They feel like these weird event films that have no build to them.
Fair.
And Doctor Strange, even after that trailer, the No Way Home trailer, I'm very confused. What's going on in Shang-Chi? I'm confused. And maybe that's a good thing that we're asking these questions. But both those films feel very out of place right now.
Well, especially like Shang-Chi, I kind of thought it was a tie to the Eternals, to be honest with you. With the 10 rings
the other way. But we haven't reviewed that on our show yet.
Yeah, see, I thought it was
keep the spoilers to a minimum there for Shang-Chi as well.
But even like the Eternals, like that trailer suggests that they're building this grand story and they're going to give you a whole bunch of history and maybe a bit of secret history, but something that's not multiversal. So you have this next level set of heroes and their villains, and then you're going to have the Celestials. And then, so you're going to build this all up. And then maybe if you don't need to use it, you can kind of bin it with the multiverse. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's like part of it is just like the comic book bias that I have, or comic book experience, because it's just like I've seen the multiverse go so well and so wrong so many times, right? Like,
and I think more probably there's a lot of great multiverse stuff, but if I'm being honest, I've probably read more stuff that was confusing and sideline stories and characters than I have on the flip side of it.
Yeah, more often than not, it honestly it doesn't work. It's just used.
It's used as a crutch to get out of something, to help
Yeah.
make something go away, or it always has been. I mean, since the middle '80s with Crisis, and it's always been that way.
I really think, and this isn't a knock because Kevin Feige is a genius and he has my utmost respect, and I already crown him probably one of, if not the greatest producer of all time, because no one knows an audience like him, and he was able to build this on a pretty decent gamble back in 2008, and they stuck to the plan up and through 2012, and then after 12 on, it's been nothing but legendary. I do think, because we find out about stuff late, like even stuff I feel like hits the trades late. For me, I really feel like they decided, I know Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness was going to be a film, and they had these shows like Wanda and Loki planned, but I think they were going to build to it more. And then, dude, I swear to God, it was like after the Keaton and Affleck news, all of a sudden, it's like Spider-Man got totally revamped. And there's that stuff with John Watts, he's getting Fantastic Four, and it was going to be a very grounded, he's on the run in New York, and you feel that at the beginning of the script before it really tone switches into this multiverse thing. They did well with the writing by giving him a reason. And I know they said Strange might be in the movie, etc. But you see back when, they were doing BVS, it was going to be Captain America and the Serpent Society. And then the Civil War thing changed, and conveniently they're both in 2016. And conveniently we got No Way Home real quick, and then Strange 2 before The Flash is going to come out. And before COVID and stuff, I'm not sure how these release dates looked. I forget, honestly, where they were.
Yeah.
But part of me wonders if Feige starts reading the industry the same way he reads audiences, and it's like, hey, if DC is going to do that, hey, I think it's about time to bring that T and A guy back, because I'm not allowed to say their names. And I think they were shocked at how well Venom did. And even though he didn't want to do it, Sony's like, we'll take him back because that guy made a lot of money. And if you give us our Spidey back with that Venom, then we're going to make all the money and you're going to make none. And Feige's like, and he's a smart enough guy to know that if I should probably keep Hardy's Venom here, like I should probably try to make all the Spidey stuff work, because Holland, whether or not it pleases me to say this, he is the most successful Spider-Man. He does have the benefit of walking into the role of probably the biggest superhero in cinema, finally joining the biggest franchise in cinema, and making 2 films that are extremely accessible to the general audience, who finally get to see Spider-Man in the MCU. I mean, people are waiting for him and this guy. And if I'm Feige, I'm going, I got to start doing all this, and I got to do it soon, because he wants the Toby thing. Oh, sorry. He wants the T thing to be bigger than the Keaton thing. I really think there's a little bit of that at play. I really do. It's too convenient these 2 times in a row. It's too much of a coincidence to be like, he didn't get that idea. And I'm not saying he plagiarized or stole, but it's a case of McDonald's versus Burger King, right? Like, hey, if they're going to do that, if they're going to throw in the icy machine, we're going to throw the icy machine. If they're doing the chicken fries, we're going to do the spicy nuggets. Like, it's like,
It's also we're gonna wrap this one up here in 2 seconds, but it's also, for the Spider-Man stuff, it's also a way for Feige and company to keep Sony at arm's reach and accessible, but not necessarily in their universe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It is a bridge of convenience.
And like Nico was kind of alluding to, like, cards on the table, I think a good number of people would take Spider-Man over any character in the MCU, regardless of how beloved they are. Like, it's just what it is. Like, and I think Feige knows that he needs to keep the most popular horse in the stable as much as he can, kind of thing. So that's But anyways, that was my question. So.
Heck yeah.
There it is, man. That was the first one. That was a doozy. We're gonna head over to the Caruso household.
There he goes.
For question number 2. So I hand it over to you boys.
All right. we got a good one here. So would you like to read it? Or
No,
would
you read it.
Okay. So we always talk about how, so I'm going to serve up the question a little bit. I'm going to give it some context. We always forget, and I think we're all guilty of it, or I'll just talk about me and him. We're guilty of, sometimes we give Twitter too much credit. Like we forget it.
No,
It makes up a very small part of the audience and what it means. But in terms of hype, lately there's been so much discourse around excitement of projects, do people care, etc. That
sabotaging stuff.
Yeah. And I like to remind people with this question, because I guess I'm telegraphing my answer when it comes back down to me. And I'm going to start actually with Mr. Tim here. Do you think fandom, maybe not us, but do you think the fandom in general, the diehards, the sweaties like us, do you think we underestimate the GA and still think we're the ones with the power, the say, and what these studios are catering for? Or do we forget that it's the GA determines whatever is a success? Because there's a lot of us who saw the critical reaction to films like Shazam and Birds of Prey, and were very shocked when they didn't make any money. But then I realized, oh, it's because the GA didn't give a F. So, Timmy, does fandom underestimate the GA, and does fandom still at times try to act like it's larger than the GA?
Yes, I think we heavily underestimate the power of the GA, very, very much so. Our window into a lot of this is curated so narrowly on things like Twitter, Instagram, whatever. You go through who we follow, what the key topics are that we hashtag, the things that we embroider our lives in and talk about every single week are front and center. The GA does not get that sort of window or that experience. They might tune into podcasts at build-ins to things like the Eternals or Shang-Chi or whatever, but they're not listening to the day-to-day. They don't hear the discourse. They're not upset about what Denny Villeneuve said about Marvel movies. They don't care. Yeah. And they are the force that will determine who gets a sequel. They will determine the direction and of films to some capacity, and who actually gets to be front and center at the next Avengers film. It's the GA that gets it over $1 billion. It's the GA that is talking about this thing, and now you see it on shoes or lunchboxes or whatever. That's who's driving that. We are such a small corner piece of the audience, but at times it feels like we are the only audience. But it's because of the way that, and I think it's a benefit, right? Social media allows you to see the things you want to see. You can push away the negativity. You can push away the news, the craziness, whatever, and you can get your center, your focal point. But these movies, like Endgame does not make however much it made, biggest film of all time, $2 billion, if the GA isn't there. Like the GA would be my wife, my daughter. Big shout out to both of them. I know you guys are watching.
Heck yeah.
Yep.
But they are the ones that I gauge off of, my wife especially, when it comes to some of these films. Like, do you want to see this? No. Do you want to see this? Yeah. And so that to me is like that periphery. She kind of gets the bit from me because of the way that I'm always just in the middle of it. But yeah, I think the long answer short, yeah, the GA holds all of the power in this. If a movie, the GA doesn't see it, it's not getting a sequel. So
Zeddy is the person I want to answer the next question.
Oh man, I mean, that is a great question. I mean, not to tune your own horn. Actually, maybe a little bit. I mean, I do think it is a little bit of both, to be quite honest. I mean, I've gone into movies thinking that, man, this is one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. And then I look at other people and they're like, I don't even know what the hell you watch. So, it's such a lopsided thing that not even I even understand. Because I do think it is a little bit of kind of both. And I think we underestimate Twitter. I think we underestimate the GA. And I think it's a little bit of, you got to look at what we have now, I guess, today, right? I mean, you compare the GA in like early 2005 to 2012. It's a lot different than it was back then to what it is now, right? I think that's true. All this plethora of entertainment that we that we have today, right? I mean, so much of the same stuff is actually being offered today, where it's like, I can go into a movie like The Protege and have a grand time with it, and then I can go into a movie like Green Knight or something and have two totally different reactions to it. Two totally bad examples. That's my fault in a moment, but I think everybody can kind of get what I'm inferring here. Shazam and Endgame, I guess, right? Two really good, I think Endgame. Two really good movies, but two very distinct movies, right? Audience certainly reacted differently to both of those, but they're still comic book movies. So it is, maybe it's a little bit of, people are just gonna like what they like. Maybe it is a little bit of Twitter. Maybe it is just people just don't care. Maybe there's a little bit of that too. But it's entertainment is certainly shifted. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But again, I don't know if I answered it, but I think it's one of those, like, it has an answer, but it's one of those that I think we're still trying to figure out the answer, to be quite honest.
Lovely. Mr. Carlos, the goddamn Batman, the sexiest bat chin I know. Give me your thoughts.
My thoughts. So there's a couple thoughts. So yes, Tim's wife is amazing, and shout out to his little girl, Team DC, and it's Denis Villeneuve is how it's pronounced, Ian.
Man. So all my skills to get that mess out. I'm terrible with names.
Mr. Denis Villeneuve. Man, Daddy Bats, you and I, we've been in the trench for a long time, man.
Yep.
And this is the answer to this one. The short answer to it is, Nico, yes. Yes, like the hardcore fanboys completely underestimate the power of the general audience, and they also underestimate the size of the group of people that are fans but might not be sweaties, that might not go to the conventions and stuff, but do have a length of experience and a love for these characters. So there's the guys like Nick Sr. and myself that from the time we were kids, we were reading comic books and shepherding these things and loving them and really holding on to them. And we and the few people that we knew, that if you knew anybody, like you live in one of the biggest cities in the United States, and you tell us all the time you had nobody that were into comics.
I had to have a kid.
Yeah, exactly. You had to grow
up a little bit.
Yeah, you had to
waited a long time.
And I was lucky that I kind of had Batman 89 come into the middle of my youth. That created like a whole bunch of fans, and then all of a sudden I became the most popular guy in school for a short period of time because this guy knows Batman, and that's the cool thing at the time. But what hasn't translated in people's minds is that the group of people that love these things because of things like Batman 89 and Batman the Animated Series and the Fox Kids X-Men show and the Spider-Man show on Fox. Like for Nico, you love Spider-Man, but your gateway into that is totally different than your dad's, because I'm going to suggest that it came by way of that TV show as opposed to 100%. The comic books and stuff like that, right? And it's kind of like, it takes me back to a couple weekends ago when we hung out with Tim's aforementioned wife and daughter, and we gave his little girl a whole bunch of clothing that my kids had, and it was all these DC shirts, and they were kind of remarking about how we had 2 of them. And it's because for a period in time, you couldn't get that stuff. So we held on to it. And it's like, we need the Supergirl shirt for like 18 months, and we need it for 2 years, and we need it for 24 months, because that stuff didn't exist back then. Whereas now, like, you can't give away shirts from DC and Marvel and everything else. Like everywhere you turn, they're there. And so I think there's a group of fanboys that don't appreciate how much this thing has grown, and how much that there's this whole new audience that, they might not be showing up at the comic stores, but they've loved this stuff for decades now through the shows and then the movies and everything else. And their dollar is just as valid to Disney as my dollar is. So I think there's a bit of a lack of appreciation for that. And you like log on to any thread about anything, like Spider-Man in particular, and you'll see this one group of people old school comic book guys crapping on the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man guys, who are crapping on the Spider-Man the animated series guys, who are crapping on the MCU guys.
Yeah.
And then those guys are crapping on the comic book guys. Like it is like people just need to realize that these characters are there. They're there for everybody, and a rising tide raises all ships, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm a DC guy, I'm a Marvel guy, but if one of those tanks and starts losing millions of dollars all the time at the movie theaters, guess what? The audience is going to move on to something new because you stand out. Like they're probably expecting Shang-Chi to show up in the Batman because there's no difference to them. Like Jeff Goldblum said, it's all comic books.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. I think the funny thing too is that, like, just to bring the Snyder Cut people, like, it's weird that the diehards really think though that they could sabotage something like that. I get the biggest kick out of that on Twitter. You know, like the guy says something, the Dune director, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. And it's like, hey man, and they're already like review bombing Dune, right? And it's like, it's just so funny to think that, you know, and I bring up the Snyder people because obviously they had enough of a little bit of an influence. It was the perfect storm how that movie saw the light of day because of HBO Max, the pandemic. That's like one of those things where many years from now, we'll all look back. You guys will be to your kids, and everyone will talk about that Snyder Cut, how that came to be. You're not going to see anything like that ever again. It's just not going to happen. No. But to be naive and think like, oh my God, this director said something about my favorite character, so now I'm going to boycott his film and it's going to be a failure. To think that you have that power, and we see it on Twitter because we follow the same things. I laugh at that because there's absolutely no credence to that whatsoever. If the movies don't do well, it's because the GA is not going, they're not brought into the movie. It didn't get marketed enough. It wasn't interesting enough. There wasn't the star power. It's not a brand level name yet. It's not because somebody said something I don't like and I'm just going to rebel and not see the film. It's just, that's the thing that bothers me the most that I see on there. It's very upsetting, but the GA, which we go back to the MCU, it's amazing how the MCU has taken over the GA to where the GA is the MCU. That's how I feel, because I could talk to people. I run into people that I don't see for a long time, young, old, whatever. And it's like they're, for some reason, they're just kind of in tune to the Marvel brand, to what's going on. Because you know why the people talk about it at the water cooler, WandaVision. It's like everybody kind of gets sucked in a little bit somehow to Marvel. It's almost like that 6 degrees of separation. And the other guys don't have that yet because they haven't got that brand loyalty. So we talk about the GA. I almost consider the GA to be the MCU fan base.
It's close. Yeah. And at the end of the day, but they still don't know the ins and outs of what's going on.
They don't
until they see a trailer.
But they don't have to though.
But you do have a point, because there were a lot of people who treated the MCU when it came to Endgame and how big it was like a TV show you could binge. And I know a large amount of people who are just casual people who are like, all right, we're going to watch all those 21 films so we could go see Endgame. Because some of them are close friends of mine who never gave a damn about comic book till Endgame. And Endgame was like this crazy thing. So I'll give you that MCU take. But for me, it's agreeing with almost all you here is, our space really underestimates the GA and doesn't, and almost gives the GA too much credit, I'll say, in terms of knowledge, because, and two people, when I tweeted this, they said they didn't believe me, and I do not lie. I will not make this up. I walked out of a screening of Rogue One, and there was a very serious group of 2 people talking about where the hell Rey was. And I'm serious. I'm serious about that. Even though Vader's in the movie, even though, because maybe they're not Star Wars fans and just went to see the movie, and they saw Force Awakens and had fun with it and thought this was the sequel. They don't know that much. But that is why I'm saying, I'm still skeptical of some of the DC stuff coming in terms of how it will perform. Not for me, not for us, how it will perform, because I'm making that you got people who are going to see 3 different Batman and have to understand Robert Pattinson is in this world. Now there's going to be multiple HBO Max shows that are just this world. Then they're bringing back the guy who a lot of people my age and younger don't know as Batman, but you got Affleck returning in the movie. You're going to have 2 of them. But if they really like Robert Pattinson, he's not going to be in this movie, and he's not connected at all. But some people really might like him and not understand how he's in this movie. And then they're going to write one Batman out and keep the older one in. I'm already doing too much explaining to someone. When I have to explain to someone that much that's what's happening is a little tricky. So we're going to see how they market.
But how do you explain the Spider-Man thing?
They don't care because it's Spider-Man.
Well,
and it's the MCU.
Like the counterpoint to that, though, is like you've already had things like Into the Spider-Verse, which was massively successful.
Massively,
Sure.
yeah.
And so that movie is beloved by the general audience. And so Sony has already done a lot of the heavy lifting. And then you've taken them through Loki. And so that's kind of explained it further. And then you're going to have No Way Home, which will take it another step. And so like I think you've have that crutch that is the work that Marvel's done, that when you come in and you introduce it, it's like, oh, the Flash went back and there's like this old Batman now. And the beauty of what they have with the 3 Batman is that all 3 of them are vastly different. Like nobody is going to confuse Robert Pattinson with Michael Keaton. Right. So I don't know. I think we don't give the general audience enough credit. Like, sure, you had those 2 people that were wondering where Ray was, but who knows if they weren't blazing before they walked in to see the movie, right?
Well, and that's also a consequence of, you talk about the GA being the MCU fan base. The Ray discussion is because the MCU has trained people that the next movie
is the follow-up,
is the next chapter in this grand story.
Yeah.
And this is a problem that Star Wars is going to continue to have, even on the streaming service, with Obi-Wan and Andor and back and forth across the timeline, is that people are going to be looking for, where's Mando in Obi-Wan? Why didn't he cameo in that? Right. And so there's a certain aspect of what Feige and Marvel have done to the GA that has allowed them to drop any character into their universe. They see someone, this isn't a spoiler, but Wong is in Shang-Chi. People are going to recognize him, connect to that, feel comfortable with it, right? The storytelling is comfortable. And so the GA can sit in there, very low barrier for entry. On the DC side of things, the one maybe fallback or maybe issue that they're going to have is that, yes, you have the Marvel fan base, which maybe is the GA, or the GA is kind of used to these concepts, but you're almost pushing people into the deep end because they're not entirely familiar or connected in a more emotional and grounded way to the Flash yet. You're going to have your Batman fans that are going to be
That's right.
There's a little bit of the running before you can walk aspect of it. Even though DC had this idea first, Marvel has held the hand of everyone through the streaming service and is going to put in the groundwork to make people just buy into it. Also, it's just a brand, Marvel, right now, right? People will go see that movie regardless. What's this? Oh, it's Shang-Chi. How's it connect that? It's after Endgame. Okay, that's all people need.
Yeah.
It's Marvel.
Yeah. And so, the GA is constantly evolving, but I do agree ultimately is that it's underestimated. I think the knowledge and also the power behind what the GA does ultimately control when it comes to the direction potentially of franchises, and also what gets a sequel, what gets pushed, and what people are enjoying and watching. Like Disney Plus is huge. It's huge. Everyone is watching these shows right now because of the work that was done before.
But like you said, Tim, there's an underestimation. Like they literally put out a movie where it's like gangster Kingpin's family got killed, and so he builds a machine, and all these different Spider-Man get dragged in. Like Chris is kind of in the comments that said that Spider-Man is easier to explain. Why? It doesn't matter. There's just a Spider-Man from over here, and a Spider-Man from over there, and a Spider-Man from outside your front door, and there's like the Flash is gonna go running, and there's gonna be a Batman that he brings with him, and a Batman that he finds, and then there's gonna be just another Batman that doesn't need any connection or explanation. I don't know, man. Like A over E, the audience over the egomaniacs.
There you go, man.
Because I don't know. I don't think we give them enough credit.
Yeah.
Hey, he's in the present somewhere because he fixed Eddie's connection. So,
oh man, he's got nothing else to do. He's just hanging out at the Calgary Expo and fixing Zeddy's internet.
There you go.
One thing's for sure, I am not the best of the best. That's for sure.
Well, man, both these questions that we've had so far are two questions that I guarantee we could talk about for an hour apiece. No problem. But we have to jump over to our next question holder here. Zeddy. Zeddy is the question. What is it, man? What are you bringing to the table?
The Riddler himself.
Yeah. For us to discuss debate here.
Zeddy-nigma.
Riddle me this, gentlemen. Riddle me this. Okay, so I've had the same question since we've had the consumption of this idea. I've just been trying to phrase it as best as I can. So before we all probably got into podcasting, I guarantee we all watched and discussed movies a lot differently, right? So for people that have podcasts, I'm going to try to give this for two separate people, for people in the comments and for us. So for us, that have podcasts, did you guys, I guess, watch and, do you look at movies a lot differently now that you have podcasts? Are you going into these movies looking to review these movies? Do you think that a podcast takes some sort of enjoyment out of watching these movies? For someone like I'm going into the Batman and I'm guaranteed, to look at it one way and talk about it the other. And I don't know if that's going to take some enjoyment out of it. And then for comment section, for people that don't have a podcast, what was it like listening to a podcast? Did you find watching and talking about movies before you started listening to podcasts, I guess harpened or dampened your enjoyment of the movies? I've been kind of trying to toy around with that idea myself, actually. Tim, what do you think?
Man, I freaking love this question.
Yeah,
it is an issue that I do personally struggle with because yes, my viewing experience has dramatically changed with 5 years of podcasting behind me. And I often call it the review goggles go on when you watch a film. And I remember a couple years ago, I had to step back and say, look, I have to enjoy these first, review them second. And I'm not going in as a professional reviewer. I'm not going as a Rotten Tomatoes certified pundit on films and that. So my first step has to be enjoyment. But it has changed. It has changed because of having a podcast. And I feel like I have to consume these in a way where I'm processing everything that's going on, but then I'm also looking in the background. I'm also looking for those extra little pieces that I need to express or we need to express on the podcast to help bridge some of those gaps for the listeners that aren't looking for that or at the time are just enjoying it and don't really care. So yeah, my experience has changed. And even on the flip side of it, to answer your question about someone that doesn't listen to a podcast or pre-podcasting, I struggled with podcast reviews that were overly negative on films that I loved.
Yeah.
Because I remember listening to a podcast where they were taking Back to the Future to pieces. Oof. And I turned it off because I said, I do not want to put my love and my memories of that film up for debate. I don't want to hear that. And so there has to be a balance, like as podcasters, that we have to, I think, cognizantly recognize that there are aspects of it that people don't want to hear. They want to hear a summary. They want to hear the pieces that they missed. And they want someone to kind of bridge some of those gaps. And so I struggled with that on both sides. I feel better now. And even to the point where on our podcast, Carlos took the reins of the reviews because I was struggling with the concept of how to get that out there properly. And he brought a new layer and a new element to how we look at the movies. So yeah, it is tough sometimes as a podcaster because you feel like you got to be on. You have to know everything. Mm-hmm. And if you miss something, that is a knock against your skill set or you being in the professional space of podcasting and reviewing. This is all a hobby for us, but there is some of that we, I think, hold ourselves up a little more because we have this avenue to express and this platform in front of us that we contribute to the broader fandom.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Carlos, what do you think, man?
It's ironic that you asked this question because the last movie that we saw that we will be doing a review for, I was sitting next to our boy Troy, and I jokingly turned to him and go, "Hey, did you got some extra paper so I can make some notes for the pod?"
That's great.
Yeah. And man, it like definitely I catch myself watching movies and every so often making these mental notes saying like that's a good piece to talk about on the show, or there was things that happened in that movie that I had good bits of information from reading comic books or whatever. I was like, so I need to remember this so I can tie it to this, and then this is my talking point kind of thing. And so I don't know that it dampens the experience, but I certainly watch movies, those type of movies, in a different way, the types of movies that we'll be reviewing on the show. But to kind of go back to what Tim was saying about other podcasts, and Jared kind of brought up podcasts killing his buzz for stuff. The beauty of how we typically approach everything in the nerd room is we're always looking for the good in things, and we always sit down in that movie theater chair or on the couch with the intent and wanting to love whatever we're going to be watching. Like Venom 2, I bought my tickets yesterday and I got the guy tattooed on my arm, but there's no denying that first movie is what it is. But I'm like, I'm going to watch Venom 2, and Venom 2 is going to be awesome. Like, they've learned their mistakes and it's going to be killer. And the only thing that I would like to see happen that I'm not expecting to happen is he gets the white spider at the end of it. But aside from that, like, this is going to be great. Like, because that's the lens that we put on things, and hopefully that translates and is something that our listeners like. Because there's like a ton of cynical podcasts out there that just like to pull things down type of thing. So it's ironic. Like, I got a pretty good relationship with the movie film guys, and Zaki Hassan in particular, but it's all born out of the fact that his Justice League review for the theatrical cut actually kind of looked at some of the good things and was like, it is what it is. It's not what a Justice League movie should be, but there's bits to love about it, and you can kind of you can see the work even though they got the answer wrong type of thing, to take a page out of teaching my kid how to do math. And I messaged him about that, and we just kind of got this relationship to the point that I convinced him to buy a RoboCop hot toys. So
That's awesome.
it's kind of a cool thing. And so I think that's the mindset with how we watch things. So it's kind of interfered with it a bit, but I don't think in a bad way. I do think it sucks for those guys that have the knives sharpened for every movie that they see, that, sit down at a Birds of Prey or the Suicide Squad, and it's just like, how can I rip this apart and let me have that tick box for things that I think are wrong? Whereas I sit down, it's like, that was awesome. That was awesome. That was awesome. And by the end of it, I think I've scored one movie below a B. And I also slept on this couch, to be honest with you, because of reviewing that movie badly. But, is what it is.
It's very easy to be negative, right? It is very, very easy negative. It's harder to look at things and say, look, this is maybe what it could have been, but it's not. So we can move on from that. I remember when we did our review for Rise of Skywalker, the first comments we got was like, what are you guys so positive on this for? Like, I'll never forget that. And I just said to the dude, I said, look, man, I said, this is just our opinion, our perspective. You don't have to like it. And that's okay. Like, and I said to him, I hope you find what you're looking for out there. There's 1,000 podcasts that are talking about this film right now. And I really hope you find what you're looking for. But this is what we felt, and we have a connection to this. And I'm not, the movie's flawed in some aspects, but I still had a hell of a time sitting down and watching it. and I'm going to express that love. And so I'll never forget that. And that's always been a motivator for us too, right? Is that particular interaction I had. And the guy actually came back and apologized after I talked to him, right? Like, I don't know if he was expecting a bit more of a battle or whatever, but I said, dude, like, that's cool, man. That's cool. Just you can find, I'm sure you can find what you're looking for on the internet, man.
Yep.
I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say, though.
Yeah, I mean,
you guys got like a year behind you now, just over a year, 100 episodes now, 2 years.
Yeah, no,
what's the answer over there?
What's great is that no matter how much we all love something, no matter what it is, music, movies, there is almost an equal amount of people that hate what you love. And it's the same thing. What I don't like, there's an infinite amount of people that love. So that's the one thing you always got to remember. Mm-hmm. The thing with us that I struggle with is in the beginning in the podcast, I don't think I was honest with myself to be as constructive and critical. It was more just like I would see something, and if I didn't really like it or dig it, it was like I didn't want to come across as that. So that's definitely changed. The other thing too is that I've got to guard myself when I watch something of being like, do I like it or not like it? Or am I thinking about what other people, us, the community,
have already said,
our guys, our critics, like, is it me watching it, or is it like, am I like, oh, maybe I should like it more, maybe. So that's what I got to guard against. But I think on our podcast, we've come a long way. I've come a long way to where I'm just kind of brutally honest now. And I don't think if we're critical, I'm critical. I don't ever do it in a way to offend anybody and I'll give you my take. So that's been, Zeddy, to answer your question, it has become a little cumbersome. There's no doubt about it, buddy.
Great work.
When we sit at the show, the three of us go together a lot. It's great. There's nothing better than the three of us going. And a lot of times we have Nick's friend Alex. My daughter goes a lot. And we'll sit there and we'll talk right away. And I try to avoid that man of the moment thing, which I've fallen prey to too many times in the past, where I see something, I'm like, oh my God, that was great. Or, oh my God, that sucked. And then I'm like, wait a second. Now let me think about this. Let me really analyze it. So Zeddy, it's different because before we did this podcast, I just had you two guys and it was just much more isolated and nobody really cared. We didn't have this wonderful community of people to talk to and to converse with and like get your opinions with and maybe explain and understand what something was going for that you didn't get or look at it in a different way. So it's been a little bit of a challenge for me.
I'm glad he was honest right there about his first point there, because if you guys want to laugh, go listen to a recent episode, Zeddy, I'm not sure, where he brings up Birds of Prey again. And Dan, how do you feel about that movie?
I hate it.
Go listen to our review of it back from February 2020.
Yeah. Episode 78 of the Vigilante.
I will send you some. First person to DM me who does that and tells me what he said at the time, I will send you something. I swear to God. I have a couple extra Snyder Cut Funko Pops, the ones you had to get online, and we have some shirts. If you can tell me what he said, so he just said he hates it. If you tell me what he said on that show, and these two guys can't do it, but like if somebody DMs me what he said on that show and how much he praised it at that time, we're going to have ourselves a laugh in my DMs.
Okay, so Nick, hold on. So Nick, I got your back.
Sure.
So one of the first episodes of the Nerd Room I was ever on was a review of a certain movie in the MCU. And my oldest daughter, she's getting ready for school. I just kind of saunter out of the bedroom because I don't work Mondays. And she's like, liar. You said you loved Captain Marvel. You're a liar. You lied on that guy's podcast.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah. I love her. That is so right.
Yeah. So Nick, I'm with you. I'm with you, baby. Like
I've only done
take those hits.
Here's the thing with that movie, and we're not gonna when I saw it, I don't
pseudo Birds of Prey.
I don't think that I disliked it as much as like on the second viewing.
That
I
happens.
wasn't crazy about it,
That happens,
but I
sure.
should have been more honest with these two. And then when I watched it with my daughter, I was like, I really just took myself out of it, and I was like, yeah, I really didn't enjoy this movie. I should have been more honest about it. We're not talking
which
about the
happens
movie.
with repeat viewings. Things can age,
Yeah.
but that actually is a segue out. I wasn't doing that to just rip you because
Yeah.
I've done it twice. One I will admit, one I will never admit. And no one will ever know what I lied about. For some of you who know, some of you know what I lied about. There's
Shazam!
there's something I egregiously lied about for a reason. So no one bring it up and no one put it in the comments, because some of you in the comments know too. No one say that, because that could ruin a future opportunity, and I don't want that to happen.
The wise of
Stop.
Nico.
Shush. But it brings me to my point though, is is that 100%. I really struggle with it. I don't think I've ever recently, I don't think I've ever liked or disliked something on a larger scale just for the podcast, but I have found myself hurrying up and hoping, trying to think of a take that I'm going to say right away.
Yeah.
And then maybe that take won't age as well, but I wanted to say it because I wanted in this space to put it out there.
Yeah, you want to be.
Even though we're not as large of an audience as comicbook.com, I love our listeners. I love our community, and they give us the confidence to feel like they give a damn about what we say. So in a way, it's fun. I'm like, when I'm seeing Suicide Squad, I'm like, okay, I'm going to say it's like the best Harley stuff I've seen, because I felt that way, but I really wanted to say it. And then I say that, and then I think about some great stuff she did in Birds of Prey performance-wise, and I'm like, okay, maybe I was right. I still think I'm right, but it's one of those I struggle with. Me and my dad do catch ourselves all the time, though, going, so what I'm going to say is, and we're like, oh, no, wait, enjoy the thing. Okay, wait, so what I'm going to say on the, and then we're like, oh, wait, let's just talk about what we like.
Let's
what
just
we
enjoy it
instead of
not
like
worry about what
planning
we're
on what
say,
we're going to say.
Mm-hmm.
I have another layer to this, though. I think, to add on to your question, Zeddy, we all have an audience, whether we have podcasts or not, with social media, with Twitter and Instagram, right? We get to perform with those apps, right? We put something out there and go, here's what I look like, or here's what I think, or here's what I say. And you guys could do whatever the hell you want with it, and we might engage or not. But because the quick accessibility of something like Twitter and early critic reviews and early fan reviews, and I'm removing the times where we've seen something early and we feel like we really got to say something about it, I'll sometimes see things early, and I can't help it but watching the movie, and I'll find myself lapsing and going, let me see if that person's right. Let me see if that person's wrong. Yeah. And I'll have to, and I still struggle with that, and I'll still go, no. And I keep trying to pull myself back and forth. But like I said, I don't think any single thing I said has really exacerbated if I liked or disliked something. But sometimes I feel like when you talk about it on a pod, it might sound like it. I don't, quote unquote, I won't use the word hate for Superman and Lois, but if someone watches that stream we did, they're going to be like, oh, this guy hates it, right? But that's because the things I chose to say with my opportunity with this damn microphone in front of me, and some of these too, what I chose to say was all I got, right? Was all that I heard my voice saying. If they want to know any more, they got to dive deeper, go to my account or whatever. So Zeddy, that's a great question.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think too that there's always the opportunity to be, and I find myself doing this after years and years of reviewing movies. Like, I don't even know how many movies we've reviewed, but you can be constructive and not mean.
Mm-hmm.
You can be constructive and not overly critical. And you can be constructive and move on from that point very quickly. You don't need to spend the majority of your podcast on the negative pieces. No one wants to listen to that. No one wants to listen to that. And I found myself early days, you guys kind of got all these things going through my head. Yeah, leaning towards like, let's always be this. But I found recently it's about just being honest with yourself, right? and not lingering on things. Like, you can go listen to our Batman vs Superman commentary, right? And I'm very honest about it, but it's balanced honesty. You can't tell me that, even you guys, you can't tell me you sat and watched Captain Marvel and hated or disliked every single second of it, right? And so, like, there's always
there was a second that I liked.
It was the loading joke. It's loading joke might be the funniest joke they've ever penned, set up, and executed. And that is the one compliment where I give the film and go, that joke. And I'm usually critical of the MCU's humor. That joke is so funny, where this guy, I didn't think was going to finish Captain Marvel, and that joke happened, and he was laughing pretty hard on the couch over there. I'm like, okay, he's at least still in. He's at least still in for the rest of this 40 minutes of movie. But yeah.
There's so much there. Like, I don't even listen to reviews anymore before I review an episode, because I do fear,
absolutely,
I do fear that I'm going to be taking other people's thoughts and opinions into our own review. So I haven't listened to any Shang-Chi reviews, nothing. And so it is what it is. But, like, I think the idea is construction, or being constructive over criticism is critical. And look, the internet's forever, guys. So whatever you put out there, it's out there forever. What's your take on this one, Zeddy?
I mean, I think for me, it's just, it probably does dampen a little bit of my enjoyment. Now, I mean, you guys know me. I try to be one of the most positive and enthusiastic people when I go into these movies. Sometimes that's not the case, but that's okay.
Now, when it comes to Cavill's face in 2017, and I love that you double down on that. I love that you never compromise.
Never, man.
It's like Zeddy Rorschach.
Silver linings.
He's so mad.
That CGI'd mustache birthed the Vigilante 1939 podcast.
It did though. That's a damn good point. It's a damn good point. So I love he never compromises.
So there stands for hope, man. Stands for hope.
Oh, that movie it stood for something. But hey, I love you guys. Hey, all I'll say is the two guys that I vibed with in the bathroom after that movie, I still love you guys. That was glorious. We were all very upset at this.
That's a little after dark talk, there, Zeddy.
Yeah. This is what's in here, one. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it dampens it, but it also, I guess, adds to it in a little bit too. Like, I guess if I love the movie, I'm just chomping up the bit to get on a podcast and talk about the movie, right? But then there's also, when I'm watching a movie, I'm like processing, like Tim and Carlos, like you guys all said, I'm like processing how I'm going to say this take and how I want to say this thing, how I want to open the show, that kind of stuff. But I think it's also that, what podcasting, I guess, has just done, I guess, for me, for you guys, opening up this whole new sector of just fandom that I didn't even know existed, that was out there. Like, I've said it on Vigilante, I've said it on multiple shows. I love the Dark Knight trilogy to death. I love the earlier Spider-Man movies to death. When I got into podcasting, there were people that did not feel that way, and that absolutely blew my mind. So, and that's okay too. But I guess that's the beauty. That's the beauty of this, But you're right. It's not okay. Grow up. But I guess that's the beauty, and I guess the non-beauty of it too, right? So it's tricky for sure. It's why I asked this question, because a lot of I don't even have the answer to it.
Well, and I love the way you kind of put a bow on the end of that one, because that's an aspect too that we all benefit from. Look, podcasting and these movies and reviewing and talking about us brought this crew of people together.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. We have a wonderful community that surrounds both of our podcasts. We got a lot of Jared and Chris and everyone here. Right.
Awesome.
And
wonderful.
We connect through the love and passion of this, and it's really fundamentally the podcast that do that. So there's a bit of sacrifice there, but probably the upside, I think, for all of us is that now we're exposed to this brand new community that we didn't have 2, 3, 4 years ago. And so there's the difficult parts of it, but I think the upside, the reward is way outweighs, us penning stuff in the movie theater, thinking a bit harder about certain aspects of it too. And it's, man, I got to add
one thing. Do you ever get a little sad, when you wake up or something and you see Ian doesn't like your take?
Oh man, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart.
or even Jared or somebody like that. Like they have the comment after, and you're like, oh man, you're like, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't have said that or whatever. Or like, or it just, I just get a kick out of that, and that's what makes it so much fun.
Mhm.
Because no matter what I say, like I never want someone like to think that I'm, that like I don't like something. I don't want, but that's what makes it great is the constructive criticism, and the feedback is wonderful. But,
and it's tough to like on the show sometimes, especially when you have like these roundtables or crossovers. Like I still go back to Falcon and Winter Soldier when Tim kicked it off all enthusiastic, and then Carlos and I, Batman and Robin, come in and like the writing on this thing was so sus. And we're like,
yeah.
And then I'm sitting there with Tim, and I'm like, oh man, he was so excited.
But like, look,
my
that's the brilliance of it, right? It's balanced, right?
Yeah.
I always say no one wants to listen to a podcast where
That's
three or
true.
four people are high-fiving the whole time about how amazing this is, and these things don't come without flaws, right? And I'm always going to come in guns a-blazing with the MCU. You guys all know that.
Always.
And I love that.
But I require that tempering, right? And I rely on my co-host to temper me on certain aspects of it because I know they're going to bring that. And I do that for them on different elements too. And so, you can hear on our latest podcast, I'm screaming about Hawkeye, and Troy brings me down a little bit, right? He's still positive, but he tempers it a little bit. And I think we need that as hosts. We have to rely on our hosts to do that, is that you get this balanced opinion set, right? Sanjay, he's the craziest podcaster in the world, and his likes, like it's all over the map, but it's brilliant too.
Like when he was the only guy who hadn't seen Army of the Dead yet.
Yeah.
You guys are like, how have you, the biggest Snyder guy of the four, hasn't seen Army of the Dead? That was every show of your guys is stellar, but that one was funny because it kept coming back to, oh yeah, he hasn't watched it yet, this guy. Oh, that was so funny.
So great. All right, we're going to move on to our last question, our fourth question of the night, and I'm going to bring this one home for us. So, streaming service, guys, has become a massive piece of how we consume the franchises that we know and love. It's garnered a lot of attention, not only from the fanboys, but also the general audience here. So we're getting a lot of stories being told there, very drawn out, long form storytelling. We've seen things like Loki, Mando. We're potentially getting Gotham and the Penguin. All these stories coming to us through this platform. What I want to know from you guys are what characters or story that resides inside of existing canon needs a streaming service adaptation. The reason I'm putting that boundary on is because you could sit here all day and talk about comic book characters that don't have stories yet, right? We're gonna get She-Hulk. You can ask for this, that, and the other thing. Let's talk about stories inside of existing canon, like your Hawkeyes, like your Mandalorian. It fits between two spaces of existing media. So what are those characters? What are those stories that need to be told? I'm gonna go over to Zeddy first.
Ooh. Man, wow, that's a wheel banger of a question. I mean, just to your point, I mean, of what, the impact of streaming, I think is much more evident now than it was, a few years ago. We always talk about how the moment of Luke Skywalker popping in Mandalorian literally, to me, shifted just what streaming could do just in general. And then you get something like WandaVision that knocks it out of the park with Wanda and Vision. And then from there, it's just a ride. But I mean, I think something, like a Superman, definitely belongs on streaming. I think the potential of like an all-star Superman, like a Death of Superman, like a Reign of Superman, I think something like that really benefits from streaming. Because that character to me typically has felt more comfortable on TV, streaming, whatever you want to say. So I think it's a little bit of a hot take. I know I want all my characters on the big screen, but I do think Superman's best place is the streaming service, is HBO. We might see it with something like Batgirl. That might actually do wonders for Batgirl, for the character to keep on HBO Max. And it's a movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, I guess, Tim, to answer your question too, I was a huge huge big fan of Daredevil. I hope that's an okay answer. So I think that was a character that to me had still plenty of backlog to go, and whether or not it was on Netflix or whether or not Kevin Feige decides to utilize him, I think he's a character that I think you can definitely put on a streaming service, and I definitely think people will watch. So,
and inside of the MCU, Daredevil.
Yep.
Yes.
There we go. Yellow costume, red costume. Who cares?
Well, that's where they got to go, man. They got to go with that yellow costume. Bring something a little different to it.
Just not the Netflix pajamas.
No. So let's go to the Crusoe household. Nico, you got pretty excited and then came down a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, when you said,
tell me both sides of that one. I'm kind of interested.
So when you said existing, you mean a character who's already we've seen?
Yep.
Okay. And because I have one still that I think would be great that's not existing yet, but I'll get there. For me, one that's existing that I think would be electric. And how they haven't done this yet. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with this character, but I'm dead serious. A Disney Plus Rocket Raccoon adventure series would slap so hard and give him his love interest and let him be vibing around the universe for 6 episodes. And it could stand on its own so much as him it could be a prequel. It could be post Guardians, because I have a very scared prediction of what's going to happen to him in Guardians, because he was there in Endgame. Don't forget, so he was the emotional crux of that team. I think that with Cooper's voice still.
What do you think, he's going to die in Guardians?
Yeah, I do. I'm really scared about that. He's the one that would.
It's Chris Pratt, man. It's because the cartoon can last forever, but Chris Pratt.
That's true.
Cannot.
That's true. So, a good point. But a Rocket, if you want to throw Rocket and Groot in there when he was big, or teenage Groot now, I think that show would be so much fun. It could be so silly. It can be like it could be like a kind of like a more funny version of what like the Boba Fett show is, where he's just causing antics around the universe. Maybe he rallies his own team. So I'm going to cheat, because that's a Marvel one. I'm gonna give you a DC one existing, which I actually think they're gonna do. I think a Red Hood and the Outlaws one would be so sick on HBO Max. Let Curran Walters do it. He's good enough to carry a show, and then let Rose come back. Bring in a Roy Harper. Bring in maybe one or two other characters who fit that bill. To keep that Titans verse going, because I really love Titans. I'm really loving what they're doing on that show, and I think he's great. So to let him expand a little bit. Because that show's the strongest when they do their Batman stuff. So let him do that. Have Dick cameo, have Babs cameo, and I think it could be great. The one that doesn't exist that would be so great, it could be a horror comedy mix, is a Deadman HBO Max series with Boston Brand. You could have it be really emotional, where he has to bring all these people together to solve a crime. So maybe it's like a family that's been hurt, or a group of friends that's been hurt. So he has to jump into every person and try to get them. And you could have some in the JL Dark cameo, and then he's in the JL Dark, or have it be a little more comedy based, where he accidentally goes into someone's self and he causes some problems and has to fix it by the end of the episode. Ultimately still ends with him in JL Dark. But I think the concept of Deadman is something we've seen, the going into bodies a little bit, but we haven't really seen it the way that Deadman does it. And it wouldn't have to be that expensive, because when he's in the body, it's just the person you see.
Quantum Leap, man. Quantum Leap.
Exactly, like Quantum Leap in the DC world. And it could really set up that JL Dark. You could have it end in a cool cliffhanger where like Zatanna comes in and is like, what are you doing? Like, who are you? What are you doing? Blah, blah. Or Constantine's like, what are you doing, mate? You keep jumping in these freaking people, mate. That's a terrible accent. I was gonna swear and I had to stop it, because I do a great
boomerang over here.
I do a great English F word, and I know there's children watching.
Yeah, come on.
So I cannot do that. This is not the Vigilante1939. If it was, I would be going off. Yeah, no, a Deadman series I think would be so sick. How about you?
For DC, I want to see the Joe Manganiello Deathstroke.
Oh, you stole mine.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. But I want it with a twist, though. because I want him to get his own kind of grounded 6-arc thing. But what I really want to see the most, and I don't think they'll ever do this in a movie, but I think they can really do this on the streaming, is do a soft core Legion of Doom.
Sure.
Where it's not quite, and you could then bring our guy Jared Leto back a little bit. You could bring Eisenberg back. You could plant the seeds, maybe even bring Kristen Wiig. So we're talking about all these, in Black Manta. Of course, we know we're going to see him again in 2, but I would love to see it because that's the one thing Marvel really hasn't done yet. They're going to do the Spider-Man villains, but they haven't done this like multiple villain ensemble piece. So I would love to see
Thunderbolts are close. So
yeah, I know, but they're kind of anti-heroes too, though.
Sure.
The Thunderbolts, so that would be a thing. I would love to see the in the swamp. I would love to see that thing that Luther has, and you could do them really where like you don't even have to have the heroes in it. It could be like underground things that they're doing, almost like along the lines of the Suicide Squad. I got a Marvel one. I was thinking about this the other day because I'm not a huge fan of Ruffalo's Hulk, but when I saw the end, well, we could say that, right? People have seen
spoilers for Shang-Chi for the next 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Okay.
Well, he's in there and he's himself. I would almost like to see the Hulk because I think of the old Bill Bixby show.
Oh.
Almost get his own. Mm-hmm. I know She-Hulk is coming and he's going to be in there, but just to explore him, he is a great actor. He's a fascinating character that they could do so much with the world of science and what's going on. And he's got a great cast of characters that really, a lot of them have not really been introduced.
Yeah.
Some villains.
It's a shame.
I think like he's so big and I think it would explode on the Disney streaming on Disney Plus. A Hulk 6 episodes, 6 hours, almost along the lines of the old Bill Bixby one where he's kind of traveling from like point to point, trying to find himself, trying to figure something out. I would dig that.
And cast Alex Skarsgård as Doc Samson.
Sure.
With the long hair. Dude, you're in. I already have the
He's
cast.
in every show anyway.
He's in everything on streaming anyway.
Well, and I think Hulk probably will live on Disney Plus.
Other
than in crossover, because I don't think that they'll be bound by the universal distribution issues.
Right.
That's just the big screen, right? And
right.
So,
I think so. That's why I'm saying I think it could really be something. And he's got so many villains that we haven't really seen that I think would be really cool. And I think I think the Hulk could be a thing that could have like multiple seasons.
Yeah.
And you could cameo everybody in from time to time.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be this intergalactic end of the world thing. It could just be these isolated struggles that he has.
And now that we've seen him do Smart Hulk and in the post credit for Shang-Chi.
Yeah, that's what made me think about it.
Spoiler alert, be Bruce Banner again. You can do not as dark because Disney will never go this dark, but you could do a little Immortal Hulk thing where he's battling between which Hulk is going to come out. Is it the Savage? Is it Smart Hulk? Is it Joe Fixit? You could introduce it could be really cool. And Ruffalo's talented enough, Emmy winning, Oscar nominated. I think that would be a gold mine to put on this one offset story, and you could let heroes kind of cameo and try to stop him a little bit. And he's like, get out of here.
Absolutely right.
Could be really cool. That's a great one. I'm digging that, dude.
I like that.
That's a good one.
That a lot. Let's bring in, before we go to Carlos here, let's just bring in a couple from the comments. We got Chris. He's thrown in Batflick and the death of his Robin.
Got it. Chris, I know,
Chris
man.
Evans is solid.
Chris, we need the Batflick now.
We've got Jared. He wants a Clone Wars for the sequels. So something to bridge the gap there and make the sequels better. So a nice streaming service, whether it's a show or cartoon, you could do that. Bob threw it in here, a Zod series, trying to escape from the Phantom Zone, Batfleck and Robin 2. Yeah. He likes that idea coming from Chris. So yeah, some great suggestions out there. Goddamn Batman. I know you just had one scooped.
Oof. Yeah, the Manganello Deathstroke. I hung my hat on that one.
Oh, dude, we think alike. You know that we have a psychic connection. Come on.
It's true. Man, the one that and we might actually be getting it. I think we are getting it.
Batman Beyond.
Batman Beyond would be dope. Dope. And very similar to Batman Beyond. I would love to see a short, like 4 episodes, Luke Skywalker and Grogu.
That would be.
Who wouldn't want to see that, man?
Yeah, like just
Good Lord.
focused on the two of them
Wow.
doing their thing. I think it'd be super, super fun and cute. And like to go back to
Good Lord, I'm already getting. I'd have to watch that with my glasses on because I'd be crying throughout the entire.
yeah, it would be cool, right? And you could,
man.
like, I think you got to get some of that like Dark Horse comic style Luke Skywalker in, so you could scratch that itch for a bunch of people. And then Grogu is he's a force unto himself.
Good
so
Lord.
Yep.
I think that'd be cool. I don't think it has to be long. Like I said, like
No.
maybe 4 episodes max. The other one in the Star Wars space, I gotta back my boy Jared, and like the Clone Wars, it is great. It has a ravenous fan base. One of its biggest fans lives in my house, and I finance all her action figures purchases.
I love it.
Hell yeah.
But it's like the Clone Wars is an animated series. It's massive, and it's a bit inaccessible, and it's got a very unique look that I think is an acquired taste. Like I know a lot of people that just dismissed it because of the animation style. But man, like if you want to make this prequel series have a whole nother level of agency, you do a movie set between episode 2 and 3. It can either retread stuff that you did in the Clone Wars TV show or just be a mission that we didn't see. And maybe you need Obi-Wan Kenobi, but it's definitely got to be Hayden Christensen's Anakin Skywalker with the 501st.
Oh,
Like
Yes.
Beautiful.
just have him doing the 501st thing.
Yeah.
You have Tamara Morrison doing the voice for almost all the clones, and then do the DH thing for Captain Rex. You don't have to have them with their masks.
Give me
off all
Rex
that
in
often.
live action.
Rex, man.
Yes. Captain Rex is a freaking big deal in this house. Let me tell you.
He's the goat.
Yeah, and then and maybe you throw a young Ahsoka in there somewhere, or maybe you don't. I don't know. Like she's a kind of a touchy one to do because you got Rosario Dawson on the other side of it with her show pending. But yeah, I think those two would be pretty cool. And like, it's baffling to me that we didn't get any piece of the proper Clone Wars. Like you kind of see the very beginning of it, and you see the very end of it in the movies.
Mhm.
So I think we deserve a piece of it, and it'd be easy to do. And I think you can make it cool fairly easily. So yeah, those are my 2 in that Star Wars space.
Oh man, it makes me want all these shows. There's a lot there. And
Wow.
And for Troy, I got to throw out Idris Elba, Bloodsport, man.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
That's
yeah, you
coming.
know
That's
what,
gotta
dude?
be coming. That's gotta
Oh,
be.
that's-
After Squad,
he
he
was-
was remarkable in that movie, man.
Yeah.
Everybody, real quick, we did that, but I still, and I said that on our podcast, I still walk away from that movie and think he was the best part of the movie. I really do. And I'm not slighting Harley and the Ratcatcher was absolutely outstanding. They all were. But I watched that movie 4 times. And I always come away with it and say, like, I got to see this guy again as this character, And if Will Smith came back and they had a little dynamic
Oh, that would be sick.
together, I think that would be outstanding. So
It would be amazing. You could either do it as a prequel or you could do a sequel.
Yep.
Like 6 episodes, and you have your build, and your last episode is him shooting Henry Cavill's Superman, and then eventually getting taken into custody.
That would be cool.
And then that's your segue.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Where is that with the
That'd be
Superman?
awesome.
With
The only
Connect-
thing is
connect
you
with the
don't
universe.
see Henry Cavill.
Oh gosh.
You just see you don't see that.
You could just see his chest and the bullet.
You could get David Sandberg to do it. Yeah, just him from the neck down.
That's it.
Oh, it's hysterical.
All right. Well, there's not much
Tim.
more I can add to this conversation.
How are you going to
Yes,
top this, Tim? Now, come on, you
He
always
will.
do.
He will. He will.
I
You
don't think I can
always
top
do.
it, but to me, there's one story inside of the MCU that I really want told, and it's a story that doesn't have rippling consequences throughout the universe, but it's the Captain America running through time with the Infinity Stones.
It's a good
You know
one.
what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
a great way to bring Evans back to that role. there's so much they could do with cameos and where he goes and the troubles he has along the way. One episode per Infinity Stone. I think it would be really cool to see him interacting with the Red Skull. Let's find out who he married and what he did. You know what I mean? Like, my wife and I just had this conversation the other day about the consequences of Rogers going back to, and would he ever stay with Peggy? And I'm convinced that he kissed her and left. He had the dance, he fulfilled that, then left. So I want to see that piece in there, right? Because it's a low-hanging fruit, and it's a story I think we all kind of want.
That's brilliant. I mean, I've always wanted that. I would love for them to do that.
They're so.
You got one more. Come on.
I don't got. Well,
come on. Give us the DC one, you Marvel guy. Give us one DC. Come on.
Well, I don't. I agree with the Bloodsport stuff. Like, that has to happen. I think taking elements outside of the Suicide Squad, or even the next iteration of the Suicide Squad, goes to HBO Max. Where you can tell a series story, a longer form story, where you're pulling people in and out of the Suicide Squad. It doesn't have to be a movie. And I think that's a brilliant piece about the big screen and the streaming service having no boundaries anymore, is you can do that. But the DC one I did have, and I would really like to see, this is for my man Carlos there, is once we get the Flash, I want to see some time in between Batman Returns and the Keaton and Flash.
Oh my goodness. That would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
That'd be fire.
You can de-age a bit. It can be a little, you can do a little, just chronicle his life a little bit, bridge that gap. Did he ever have a Robin? What happened to his Joker? What happens, you know what I mean, to the characters that we've seen, DeVito's Penguin and all that. Like, what happened? What happened?
Him narrating it would be cool too, almost like through time. Yeah. You know what's great too about Keaton? What I love is that, like, it's funny how I always felt like there was a time where Keaton didn't like embrace the fact that he was Batman, but then it started with that commencement speech that he did. I don't know how many years ago that was, right? When he's like, "I'm Batman," and like everything that I've watched him on lately, it's like I have fallen in love with him again. Just how much he's embracing the return and respecting it and honoring it, because he knows how important it is to everybody. And, because I mean, for a little while there, I was a little bit too like, oh God, it's been so long since he's been Batman, and Returns is what it was. It wasn't always my favorite Batman movie, even though I love 89. And I look at Bale and I go like, God, to me, he was kind of like my definitive version, even though I grew up with Keaton. But now I'm like, man, this guy is really coming full circle here, where he's like at a time in his life, he's like just so happy. And I think he just wants to give us like something great.
And he's getting a rare opportunity to come back and do it again. And possibly leave a staple on it the way I think the original Star Wars cast tried. And I think with a character like Han,
That's a great.
For a character like Luke, it worked for some, and unfortunately, we lost Carrie Fisher way too soon. So Keaton gets to come back. We'll see what the Spider-Man guys do, but Keaton gets to come back and actually be a focal point. Toby and Andrew, I think, are just a piece of that movie, but Keaton might be something far greater. So he gets to come back and do it again. Really full circle. I'm not sure the last time we saw that. It's very cool.
No, and like you're saying, Nick, like he just has this new energy. And there was definitely a time where he was just like, I'm an actor's actor, and if Tim Burton's not doing it, then I don't want to, like, that's why he left.
I remember interviews from like 15 where he didn't even want to talk about it. It was almost like he didn't want, it was almost like
there's a stigma associated with it for a long time.
Exactly. But now he's just like on cloud nine.
Because I remember he was kind of on the fence, and then he did a movie with it was like a political movie, but it was him and Christopher Reeves was in it with him. And Christopher Reeves, I remember them doing interviews and Keaton saying, like, he told me to be careful with how this will affect my career, kind of thing, right? And that's why he jumped into like Multiplicity and all these other ones, kind of thing. And then when Burton was out, and Jared again, man, if the Flash goes back and erases Batman Forever, that is a good thing for all of us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not for Pete Vera.
Not for
Pete Vera.
Oh man.
Oh man.
Oh, geez. Well, gentlemen, this has been an
Wow,
absolute pleasure.
This
4
was
questions done and dusted. That was exactly what we were shooting for here. And we hope you guys that are watching enjoy this. Let's go around the table one more time. We'll start off with the V39 boys, the Carusos, Zeddy. Guys, it's been awesome partnering up for this. I look forward to what is next, which will be over on a Vigilante platform. And we're going to be running through the same thing next month. We'll throw that date out there in the not too distant future. But let's pump the shows, guys. Vigilante1939 just hit past 100 episodes. You guys are killing it in this space. It is an appointment listening for me. But why don't you tell everyone a little bit more about the show and where everyone can find you?
Zeddy, do it.
Oh man, I knew you would
It's
do
on your
that.
screen.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, should be on your screen. I'm just kidding.
There's only so much space. My God.
Yeah. There's only so much space. I know. Well, gentlemen, thank you guys so much again. Internet troubles withstanding, I'm glad I was able to be a part here with you guys. You know, the consumption of this thing to me was that, you know, we are all fans. You know, we're podcasters. We love this thing, but we are all fans first and foremost. So the idea to celebrate being fans with you guys, to me, just thank you. So guys, where you guys can find me on Twitter, of course, at Zeddy is. I am all over the Let's Go Podcast Network. Follow the show that I co-host at Vigilante1939 with the two gentlemen above my screen. The Caruso's episode comes out every Sunday, every Monday, sometimes Tuesdays. So be on the lookout for that. I'm going to actually really follow Twitter because we're going to be announcing a new sub show that is going to be weekly, starting the first week of October, I believe. So stay tuned for all that great stuff. And I do want to plug real quick before I forget, because it just dropped today. Go head over to JJ Hodges' show called the Four Comics Junkie podcast, because I actually was on his show where I broke down Superman, the animated series. We visited the whole thing. It's a nice little retrospective of that show. So go give that a listen. And thank you, gentlemen.
Awesome. Caruso's, any last words?
Just follow me at Caruso Jr. And I want to thank you guys. This has been an absolute blast tonight. Again, we always talk about the crazy times we've all experienced here over the last 2 years, but dude, the best thing is meeting Carlos, Tim, and the community and everybody that's listening. I can't thank you guys enough, man. It has been a wonderful, wonderful experience to share somebody like me coming from a time where I had nobody to talk to, man. And I don't say that to feel sorry, but years and years went by, and this was my own like private little thing that I dealt with myself. So it's wonderful.
Hard to follow both those up. Yeah, no, just come follow me here. And I want to echo what these two guys have said. It's been a blessing getting to meet you guys and becoming so tight with you guys that we solely created a new show to hang out. It was for content, but let's not kid ourselves. It was to hang out a little bit more than we already were, because we started realizing how much time was going to pass between the MCU stuff. But no, it's been a blessing. I truly looked forward all week and all day to this, and it did not disappoint. And we got the after show that only a few of us get access to. But I will say this, hold on, guys. I always have to leave on a really funny joke here. I'm getting a call. Hold on. Wait, guys. Is Zack Snyder's Justice League calling me?
Get my
message, please. Hold on. I gotta answer.
What a way.
Oh,
Carlos,
amazing.
I'm gonna ask you to follow that one up. The goddamn Batman.
Oh man, what a blessing. Like, yeah, Tim, I think this was your brainchild to, like Nico was saying, to fill the space between our MCU and Star Wars shows kind of thing. And yeah, this ended up being I always knew it was going to be a good time, but like content wise, this is a killer show. Yeah, it was great. Like, it was so enjoyable to be a part of. And then to see the things that you guys brought to the table was amazing. Everybody in the comments, thank you for being there. Thank you for commenting. Normally I'd go back and forth with you, but the keyboard on my computer doesn't work. So yeah, like Jared, Bob, Chris, everybody, thank you for being here the whole time. You guys make it all worthwhile, and yeah, we'll be here again next month. So looking forward to it.
Yeah. I'll echo all those sentiments, guys. It's been, an absolute pleasure pulling all this together and having some fun. And this was definitely put together so we could hang out just a little bit more, but also have a bit more of an open and free discussion, which I thoroughly enjoyed, stepping away from a bit of the constructed episode and theme. And so I can't wait to do it again, guys. If you don't follow us, you can follow myself at the NerdRM, and you can follow Carlos at Canadian Caped Crusader. And our podcast every single Thursday, it does drop. The Nerd Room podcast is searching on your podcast apps. We're trying to build out this platform here on YouTube, so a sub would be appreciated. You'll be seeing more videos of collections, unboxings, these type of things as we start to move that and put some momentum in and behind YouTube, because we are enjoying this space. And like Carlos said, thank you to everyone that is participating in the comments, watch us live here, and is also watching this a little later on, catching it at a different time zone, or just at your convenience. So we appreciate all of that. And guys, we're going to end this one with a, just echoing what Zeddy there. We're always here to celebrate. We're always here to have fun. And we hope you guys did too. So we'll talk to you next month, and make sure, again, podcast every single week from V39 and from the Nerd Room. Plug into those. You get just a little bit more nerd in your life. So we'll talk to you guys very, very soon.